Aubrey here. Welcome to another recorded lecture for Sci 1102. If I sound a little different, it's because I have a cold at the moment, but that will not stop me from doing this lecture. So today we will be discussing motion and graphical analysis of motion from its prehistoric views like that of Aristotle and to the Galilean views of motion. Our learning objectives are as follows. First, on motion, we will compare and contrast the Aristotelian and Galilean concept of motion. We'll also learn about free fall, explain how Galileo inferred that an object in vacuum falls with uniform acceleration and that forces not necessarily sustain horizontal motion. We will also discuss about speed and velocity, the difference between the two, and we'll also discuss about acceleration. Finally, we will also discuss the graphical representation of motion, and we will also solve problems involving the equations of motion like speed, velocity, and acceleration. But for the purposes of this video, I will focus on the theoretical aspects, and then when we proceed to our on-site classes, we can proceed with the solving. I will touch on the solving a bit just so that we have like a theoretical introduction to the solving, but most of the discussion will be purely theoretical. I'm sure you are already familiar to the concept of motion as we have discussed this or encountered this in our previous years in school. So you already know that when we are talking about motion, it is defined in physics, the change with time of the position or orientation of a body. Here we are talking of a body as an object or anything that has mass, and changes in its position is in terms of space, the planar space of our physical reality, and of course that change requires a certain duration. So the factors that are involved in motion are three. You have the object that is in motion, the area or the space where the change or the motion is occurring, and of course the duration of that change. To understand how humanity understand motion to the years, we'll start with the earliest thoughts that we can trace. First off, Aristotle. Aristotle is a famous philosopher, and we are still studying a lot of his teachings, even thousands of years since he has lived. Some of those teachings. So, in order to understand how humanity has changed in terms of understanding of motion, we'll start to the earliest thinkers of physics, and that is Aristotle. As you know, Aristotle is a Greek philosopher, and he has several ideas, especially that became influential not only in the Greek society but also in our society today. Some of his influential thoughts also dabbled in the realm of physics. So, what did Aristotle think or thought about physics? So, first off, his idea or his explanation states that in order for an object to move, it must be applied force. So, I think we can all agree that is correct. So, for example, if I get a yellow ball, and what we're going to do is input some amount of force to it, it will continue or it will start moving. So here we create motion. So if force is applied to an object, it will undergo motion. Now, in order for the ball to continuously move, because we all know that the ball will eventually stop, the object must maintain motion by exerting continuous force. So it's like in a car, in order to continuously move your car, you need to continuously press the gas in order to provide force to move your car. Or for example, if you are walking, you have to continuously implement force in your legs to continue walking. And that's pretty much how the Greeks and several people understand the concept of motion. In order for an object to move, you have to implement a certain force, and if you want to continue moving that object, force must be continuous as well. So based on Aristotle's teaching, if you want to move an object that is currently at rest, so that is a physics term to refer to objects that are not in motion and are occupying the same unmoving space, the object must be implemented or set in motion by an external continuous force in order for an object to continue moving in motion. So in hindsight, that sounds right. If we observe our normal day-to-day lives, the thoughts of Aristotle is correct, but not completely, because Aristotle's ideas are applicable in certain environments, but not all physical environments. So here comes Galileo Galilei. As you know, Galileo Galilei is one of the earliest scientists during the Renaissance period, and he is famous for his observations of the early astronomy. He did not invent the telescope per se, but he created his own version that allowed him to observe the rings of Saturn, Venus, and made other significant contributions to the realm of science. Now, Galileo Galilei also had his own understanding of physics. Utilize thought experiments. Now, thought experiments are experiments per se, but instead of doing it physically, you do it within your mind. You include factors that should be there physically, and you implement the experiment in your mind. Now, forgive Aristotle or Galileo rather, because at the time during the Renaissance period, there is not an established scientific method wherein all of these things must be shown through data and research. But his thought experiments were actually quite useful because he was able to come up with experiments that cannot be implemented or cannot be done during his time because of limit of resources, of course, just because they are in the Renaissance period. Now, this experiment allowed him to investigate the nature of things without actually going through the physical experiment. Now, it's not only Galileo who was able to do this. I'm sure that you yourself engage in several thought experiments. Now, this is a reasonable approach that is applied in economics, history, mathematics, philosophy, sciences, and physics, especially if the current experiment cannot be physically done due to limitations. Now, just by logical thought, Galileo Galilei was able to create thought experiments. He focused on creating thought experiments that surrounds frictionless environments. Now remember, when we say friction, this is where there are two forces opposing each other. So let's say the drawing here, you have friction or forces against one another. Now if there is high friction, that sometimes triggers the formation of heat, or it stops objects from moving altogether, depending on the degree of friction. Aristotle's ideas applied to friction environments. That's why his idea of motion and continuous motion is correct during or in a friction environment or friction present environment. However, if friction will be eliminated, there is no more force opposing the moving object. So for example, here in our third picture, what would happen if you have a ball and you throw it into a continuous space with no friction? Now, on our planet, friction is implemented or friction is present because of the texture of the floor and the pull of gravity as well. So the ball will eventually stop if there is a friction environment. However, if gravity and spatial friction is absent, then the object will continuously move and the ball will never stop. It's like in the movies, science fiction movies, wherein an astronaut is propelled into space, and because there is no friction in a vacuum environment, the astronaut will drift into space forever and ever because there is no friction. Okay, so the object will just continuously move without the need of continuous force from the external. Just to summarize, according to Galileo, the absence of friction would mean that the object would continuously move at a constant speed along a straight line because there is no friction or gravity that would stop the moving object. This is a result of his logic and mathematical knowledge. If an object is moving through a frictional horizontal surface. Galileo, however, did not provide the reason why. Even if he has improved the thoughts of Aristotle, so from friction environment of Aristotle to frictionless environment, Galileo did not explain why certain objects or why all objects or bodies move continuously at a straight line. So he simply stated that this is the natural state of things. But later on, the natural state of things is named and labeled now as a new term. And that term is called inertia. So the inertia is the tendency of a body to maintain its state of rest or of uniform speed along a straight line. It is also the tendency of things to resist changes in motion. Now we have several examples of inertia. For example, seatbelts. Seatbelt has been invented because of inertia. So if you are moving, for example, at 10 kilometers per hour, let's say 10 kilometers per hour, and you suddenly step on the brake or si manong driver ng jeep ay biglang promeno, so the jeep will stop immediately from 10 kilometer per hour to 0 kilometer per hour. But it doesn't mean that the objects within will stop as well. That is because you that is inside the car or the jeepney, whichever you prefer, is also moving at 10 kilometers per hour, not only the jeepney. So if the manong driver suddenly stops, bigla siyang stop the jeep will stop at 0 kilometers per hour, but you yourself is still moving at 10 kilometers per hour. That's why you will feel that you are still constantly in motion. That's why you have to stop yourself from pushing your seatmate or the other passengers, or you have to catch yourself and stop yourself to 0 kilometers per hour. If you are not ready, of course you will see yourself maybe on the floor next to manong driver. So that's an example of inertia. Another thing is objects usually will require more force in order to start motion. This is evident when you are moving large objects. You have to exert more force in order to jumpstart motion. Now, once the object is in motion, usually minimal uh, force is required because the object is already in motion. So the tendency of things to resist change is called inertia. So for example, if an object is already at rest, you need more force in order to move the object from rest to motion, and you will also need more force to stop an object from motion into rest. That is an example of inertia, or the summary of the concept of inertia. The next concept that we need to discuss is free fall motion. Free fall motion is occurring when an object is simply falling in a blank space, so there is no friction, there is no resistance, and the only object that is triggering, or the only motion that is triggering the object to move, is gravity. So simply falling due to gravity is called free fall motion. And our two philosophers has ideas regarding free fall motion. Aristotle and Galileo, though, had different thoughts about the concept. Right. So according to Aristotle, an object falling due to gravity is the natural motion of objects. At the time, the Greeks doesn't have the concept of gravity or does not understand why objects naturally fall to the ground, so they just simply label it as natural motion. Now, according to Aristotle, the heaviest object will reach the surface of the earth first. So again, according to Aristotle, the heaviest object will always reach the surface of the earth first. For example, if we have an experiment between an elephant and a mouse, following the concept of Aristotle, the weight is the factor that will define if it will go first or will arrive at the ground first or not. So if we follow Aristotle's line of thought, between an elephant and a mouse, the elephant will reach the ground first before the mouse because of the difference in weight. However, he did not consider that there are other factors that must be playing in our physical state of our planet or just simply on Earth. For example, considering that there is no resistance in air, which object will fall first? The apple or a watermelon? So, considering there is no air resistance, if we follow Aristotle, the watermelon will fall first. It will reach the ground first. However, Aristotle actually did not take into consideration the concept of air resistance in his line of thought. So, this is actually wrong. So what's the correct explanation? Let's talk about the thoughts of Galileo. So according to Galileo, objects in a vacuum fall with uniform acceleration regardless of its weight. So Aristotle, when he said that weight is a defining factor of how fast the objects will fall to the ground, he did not take into consideration the air resistance that is possibly present. But if the objects are in a frictionless environment or in a vacuum, then all objects will fall at a uniform acceleration regardless of the weight. So again, Galileo actually did not do the experiment, but he just used his reasoning and logical arguments in order to come up with this concept. So if we compare the two thoughts, the old ideas of Aristotle and of Galileo, let's say that we climb up to the Tower of Pisa and we release two different types of balls. You have a cannonball and a lead ball. Now, if we follow Aristotle's old idea, the cannonball will of course fall first because of its weight. But if the wind or air resistance is negligible and the object is technically under free fall, wherein it means that gravity is the only force acting upon the object, they will actually have the same acceleration due to gravity. Now, there are of course certain exceptions because there are objects with better air resistance. So for example, if you compare a paper or a feather versus coins, papers and feathers have better air resistance. Therefore, meaning when we say air resistance, by the way, air is acting or implementing force upon the object, which makes it seem to float or suspend gravity for a little while, but eventually gravity will win because it has a larger force. Now, assuming that there is no resistance and two objects are falling in a vacuum, then these objects will fall at the same rate. To be specific, if air resistance is negligible, then the object will fall at a standard value of 9.8 meter per second squared, or simply referred to as g. This is the constant acceleration due to gravity. So meaning all objects, regardless of weight, be it an ant or me or you or a whole piano, it will fall at 9.8 meter per second squared due to gravity. Now, as further proof, I have linked a video in our BBL titled Moon Experiment. So, in the voyage of Apollo 15, Commander David Scott actually recorded an experiment wherein he took a hammer and a feather, a falcon feather, and he tried to drop them at the same time. Now, why would he do that? Because he is in a vacuum. There is no air resistance in the moon. Therefore, if he released the two objects, then they fell at the same rate, which only further supports the arguments of Galileo Galilei. Alright, so as a review, let's try to interpret concepts based on the thoughts of our two philosophers. So, what does an object require to continuously move through space if we follow Aristotle's ideas? So, in a friction environment or a friction present environment, an object must be continuously exerted force in order to move through space, while for Galileo Galilei, the object in a vacuum or a frictionless environment will continuously move regardless because of the lack of friction, and that is because of inertia. Now, to answer the second question, which will fall first? Is it a rock or leaf? So, if an object is in free fall, which one will fall first, the rock or a leaf? If we follow Aristotle's idea, it will be the rock because it has a higher mass. But for Galileo's thoughts, if it's in a vacuum where air resistance is negligible, then these two objects will fall at the same rate. Okay, so I hope you are quite fascinated with the concepts that I have discussed so far. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out and I will be happy to answer it for you. Stay safe. Bye.